respect their teaching and our treaty obligations as we grow together. And we will just pause for a moment of silent reflection. Council, the agenda was distributed prior to the meeting today. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing nothing, just looking for an adoption of the agenda. Deputy Mayor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Landsman, all in favor. That motion carries. On to the adoption of minutes and business arising from the minutes. We just have one set of minutes, being the regular council meeting from October 7th. Just looking for a motion to receive and approve. Councillor Watt, seconded by Councillor Johnston. All in favor? And that motion carries. We have 3 items on our consent agenda. Is there any item that council would like to hold? Okay. So we have an Amber Alert and a system test. Our phones are working. So the consent agenda, sorry. Is there any item that council would like to hold for discussion later on in the agenda of those 3 items? And if not, I'd just be looking for a motion to receive. Deputy Mayor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Watt. Any discussion? All in favor? And that motion carries. Okay, so on to presentation and public meeting, and we do have the Township of Douro-Dummer draft 2026 budget. What we're going to do, council, just so that everybody is aware of the proceedings, we're going to go into a public meeting forum. We'll be looking for a motion to do that momentarily. We will have a presentation from our CAO. I assume it's the same safety issue. We're not having to evacuate. So we'll be turning the presentation over to our CAO to present the draft budget. And then we'll be looking at comments from the public. Those comments could be come in writing, which the clerk will advise, but then also we'll open the floor to the public to be able to ask questions, make statements. For those who are interested in speaking, you will be requested to come to the podium and also state your name. And it's a 3-minute presentation limit for that. And then council can ask any questions as well. We'll close the public meeting. Once the public meeting is closed, council, if there's at that time anything you want to advance by way of a motion, that would be the time to do that, whether we're looking to remove or add or make changes to the draft budget. And we can make those changes at that time. Just for the sake of the public, and I'm sure our CAO will go over this as well, this is the first area, the first public meeting within the budget schedule. We do have a coffee and conversation event that's much less formal than the council chambers. That's happening on Thursday evening in the town hall starting at 6:30. And again, public are invited to come to that event and offer any concerns, feedback, ideas. We will be then also having a second draft and deliberation, so taking the culmination of that feedback, and that will be happening at a council meeting on November the 18th, with, again, any more deliberation, motions, changes coming forward, being taken into further consideration, and the final draft budget being presented and possibly passed on December 16th. So that's the timeline that we're looking at, and the opportunities, the public and formal and informal engagement opportunities that are available. So at this point then, I will hand it over to our CAO to present the draft budget, but first I'll look for a motion to go into public. Sure, go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, I'll make a motion to go into public meeting. And I do have a second thing once we were in the public meeting.
Okay, thank you. So that's moved. Does anyone want to second that? Deputy Mayor Nelson, all in favor? That motion passes. And Councillor Watt, back over to you.
Thank you very much to you, Madam Mayor. So the members of the public that are here tonight, thank you very much for coming. The ones that are online or the ones later, what kind of a time frame do they have to submit in, and who do they submit in comments, questions, changes, additions, that type of thing between now and our next November meeting?
CAO Davis, do you want to handle that in terms of timeline and workflow?
Through the mayor to Councillor Watt. So I think we would encourage any comments related to the budget go directly to the clerk's department so that they can be noted into the public record. So we're going to be bringing back a second draft budget based on schedule and timeline for November 18th. I don't have a fixed date. However, we do publish the agenda 5 days in advance or 6 days in advance of that. Yeah, so we would ask for the comments probably to be in advance of at least a week before that budget meeting would be what we would request of the public. But certainly we will put some information out on, we can put some information out on social media as we go through this process about that sort of how they can contact us or how they can contact the township with their comments.
And certainly I would also add that the public can also reach out to any one of us as members of council with any comments, either individually or otherwise by way of email or what have you. Okay, so we do have the motion has been carried. We're in a public meeting currently. All right, CAO Davis, I will hand it over to you to do the presentation then, please.
Thank you. Just give it a moment for the presentation to come up on our presentations. Thank you, everybody. So to the mayor, members of council, members of the public and staff, thank you very much for coming to tonight's budget presentation. I will note this is a pretty hefty document. There's over 57 slides attached to tonight's presentation notes. We're not going to go in depth on every single one of them. We gave a very robust budget presentation, our first presentation to council that was also in a public forum on last Thursday in the month of October. And our intention is to sort of get us through this portion, recognizing that we have an engaged group of the public that will probably want to come forward and make some comments. Slide. Budget breaks down into the budget breaks down into four separate sections, and this is very similar to the same way that it was presented in previous years. Most certainly it was this is how we presented the 2025 budget. And so we followed the same format, recognizing that we had a number of personnel changes happening in our corporation at the same time. We decided this was not a year to change dramatically how we presented that information to council. Slide, please. I will briefly touch on every year, last year and this year, I've included a message from the CAO's office thanking council and staff for the work that they've done and recognizing the role that council plays in this activity. We present opportunities for council through the budgeting process, and council ultimately makes the decision, and I think that's pretty clear. Slide, please. As by way of background to the budget is often grounded in a couple of different things, and I'm going to highlight that over the next slide or two. Really, when we go to make a budget as staff, we look at things that have been provided to us by way of policy, by virtue of council. And what I will recognize is that in our strategic plan, we highlight a series of core values as well as strategic pillars. Those core values are centered around fiscal responsibility, transparency, service excellence, and in the environment. Slide, please. And our strategic pillars that have been delineated by council through that process were service modernization and innovation, business attraction, expansion and retention, and infrastructure renewal. The next three slides give us an overview of what each one of those strategic pillars has to deal with. I'm not going to focus on those this evening simply because we've talked about them in previous council meetings. We talk about them at committee of the whole meetings, but they are what underpin the work we do on the budget itself. Section 2, please. By way of background for this budget, I think really with this story, so all budgets tend to tell a story, and I think this one tells one as well. By way of background, I sort of give you an update, or we provided an update on this slide in all that language about some of the initiatives that were brought forward as part of the 2025 budget and how those initiatives are performing and supporting the decisions we made going forward into 2026. Slide, please. Really what I wanted to highlight most is that the overview of this. So for 2026, the direction that I provided to staff and that we worked towards was that we developed a budget with a focus on maintaining service levels, advancing critical capital projects, and managing fiscal pressure while trying to be mindful of economic realities facing our residents. But some of those economic realities are also facing us as a township that we have to take into account. We continue to face rising costs for infrastructure renewal, legislative compliance, and service delivery. And we believe that this budget that we're bringing forward today acknowledges and recognizes and tries to work within those parameters. Slide, please. As highlighted with the mayor at the beginning by way of introduction, budgeting is not just simply an act, but a process. We are in the process right now. What I will highlight is, so a first draft presentation was made on Thursday, October 16th, that went through each one of these slides and divisions in great detail. Our public meeting portion of that, of the introduction portion of the budget, is for October 21st, which is tonight. I will recognize that on Thursday, October 23rd, we have a public open house by way of coffee and conversation with council in town hall between 6:30 and 8:30 upstairs. Scheduling of that event was very deliberate this year. Most importantly, we wanted to make sure it was done during what would be considered budget season, so that people had the opportunity to engage council and staff one-on-one, ask questions or make comments in particular to council related to the budget. I will then say that once we have all that feedback and we continue to get feedback or opportunities for feedback online and through the community, we plan to bring a second draft budget to council on November 18th. And that at that point, council, we intend or hope that council will deliberate that budget. And then providing we get we get direction, we will be proposing to bring a final draft budget to council on December 16th with the hopes of having that be passed. I will say that as information changes, a budget is always based on information that we have today and includes some assumptions that we do make. This information, there are certain assumptions that are based, this budget has been developed with certain assumptions that may change, and staff will plan to update the budget accordingly before passage. That being said, next slide, please. What I would like to highlight, so we made two between our delegation, our presentation on Thursday and our presentation tonight. I want to highlight two specific changes that were made, and that you'll notice some small numbers changes. When we looked at, most important, when we looked at less assessment growth in 2025, the budget figure that we had proposed originally was 0.09%. When we look at what the assessment growth we had in between 2024 and 2025, that number actually looked more like 1.2%. It was the number. We recognized that we had sort of undervalued what the impact of assessment growth was going to be, and so we brought that number forward to 1.1%. Recognizing that we might not capture 1.2, and we'll monitor those figures we anticipate before a second draft. What I also want to draw your attention to is there's a $10,000 proposed change in the capital budget portion of the budget. We've added $10,000 because as we went back and we went through that whole process, we recognized that we hadn't budgeted for a program this year that was very effective, and we wanted to give that as offer to council. I will get into it when we get into the CAO's portion, but that is $10,000 that we've put aside, or we are encouraging council to consider for the tree program that we felt was very successful this year. And because it happened so late into the budgeting process, it didn't get picked up for this year, and that's one of the reasons why it wasn't included. What I will say is it doesn't generally change the budget in too much detail. Really, it allows us to capture some growth and then spend that growth on trees as a program. What I will say is if you look at the overall operating budgets, and those tables are included within the various departmental summaries, what you will note, what we are noting is for 2026, we are asking council to approve or to consider, sorry, an operating budget at $4,441,694 with a capital budget of $1,319,973. That represents between two pieces, a 4.9% change year over year for operating and a 0.8% change year over year specifically for capital. What that impacts on the levy is the final column of that. So that's a 2.8% increase on the levy and a 0.1% increase on the levy for capital. When we account for assessment growth, we're getting our operating and capital budget that we are in control of down to 1.9%. What you will note though, or what I do note is when we look at other areas where we have less control in terms of our budgets, we look at our policing budget, as was referenced in a previous council meeting. Solicitor General has informed us that they're capping the growth of any individual policing budget at 11%. We don't know what that number looks like yet. We haven't received our bill or a notice of what the costs are going to be for 2026. So we budgeted for 11%. That number could be lower, but I am not confident that it's going to be. I then would that has in reality what that looks like on our budget is 1.5% of our levy impact. When we add 11% to the policing budget specifically, it actually comes out as 1.5% to our own budget. Also, if we look at the other two areas that we have less control on is around the library budget and the Autonomy Conservation Authority budget. Our library budget is showing a modest increase or an increase of $21,347, which I will note is a 12.6% increase year over year in terms of their operating budget. However, it represents a 0.3% increase on the levy. And Autonomy Conservation is showing us an increase of $7,761 and an ask of $123,982 for 2026, which is a 6.7% increase or a 0.1% increase on the levy. I will note that for those of you that were not in attendance on Thursday, in the presentations, we had a presentation both from the Chief Librarian, Maggie, as well as a presentation from Autonomy Conservation and their CEO, Jeanette. Both of those have gone through their various budgets line by line. We included, as was the direction in council since 2022, was to include a 1% increase annually to the capital levy to help finance the joint building. There's a slide further down that we all talk to that. That gets our annual contribution into reserves to help finance the cost of the joint building to $657,365. That makes our total levy requirement, our request this year, $7,825,084, and the total impact on the levy is 4.8%. What this means from the perspective of cost impact per 100,000 is an annual increase of $23.08, and an impact on our median properties that we gear at 256,000 is $59.08. Slide, please. I'm going to highlight a number of or summarize a number of key operating changes that are included in this budget. Whether they have whether they're larger than anticipated or they are expected, but represent some of our larger increases, and or if we've been able to account for increased revenues in various areas. Corporate-wide, one of the impacts predicated on our compensation agreement, we approve salary increases as per the OMERS annual pension inflation index. That results in an impact to the levy of $59,358 across the departments and a 0.8% impact on our levy. We anticipate seeing large increases in general liability insurance costs that municipalities are being assessed. We do not have our total for 2026 yet, but we base it on the recent trends and the costs for 2025 at a 10% increase, or $31,356, or a 0.4% increase on the budget. Good news story. Part of our annual funding that we receive from the province of Ontario. There's a couple of different sources, but this source in particular is the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. That contribution from the province anticipated for 2026 is going to be at $21,000 richer than we have in the past, or a 0.3% levy impact, which means that we're getting more money or revenues from alternative sources to offset some of the cost of operating. Now I'm going to go specifically through departmental based adjustments. Council and the committee's budgets, we've increased the cost of training to $5,000 to account for the council orientation program with an election in 2026. I also would, we note a $2,000 increase to the event committee budget to sufficiently cover expenses for our municipal events that we host every year. Corporate services budget is showing an increase in revenues from tax penalties and the provincial payment in lieu of taxes to reflect our recent actuals, which is showing a $17,676 increase in revenue. Sorry. And we have some increase, we're anticipating increased costs, software costs, to enhance some of our cybersecurity functionality and to adjust for cost increases in various software licensing that we use within the township as a $12,200 increase. Slide, please. In fire services, we are proposing to transition the contracted deputy fire chief's position from a contracted role to a permanent full-time appointment. But what I would note is there's a $25,715 impact on the levy with relationship to that piece. However, that is not reflective of just making that job full-time. The cost to actually make the job full-time as a full-time equivalent over 52 weeks of a year is $8,000 to $10,000. The balance of those funds are related to salary and what we call salary gapping. Last year, if you recall, we didn't actually engage in municipal budgeting until January, started that process in January of this year and completed that process in March, which meant that when we didn't have passage of the contracted deputy's chief position until we actually passed the budget, which was in April, which when we then account for how we deal with that, we basically didn't consider a salary from January to March because it wasn't reflective of what was happening in the organization. So the balance or the differential, the $15,000 differential, is to account for those 3 extra months of service that we didn't have in 2025. I then will note that there are 2 other increases in fire services. One is related to the paging contract. So this new contract, which has come before council and been approved previously, is significantly higher, and 2026 will be our first full year using that contract. We anticipate costs to be $41,000 higher than they were in previous years. And we have a new contract, which also came forward to council last year to deal with fire dispatch servicing. And that contract is showing an increase of $8,523. Waste services, you'll note the waste services for curbside collection, that contract expired as of July 1st. And in the first 2 quarters of 2025, we worked with our waste contract supplier, Waste Connections, to forge an extension to that contract. That extension came with increases And so the increased contract is partially due to the 2025 increase, sorry, that we didn't account for, as well as the increase for 2026. And so that's representative of $28,885 on this year's budget. Public Works has some growing costs related to vehicle and equipment repair, and so we're asking for $10,000 this year for that. And the other thing I'd like to highlight is in two other areas, in Parks and Rec in particular. We have wage and salary adjustments related to movement on the grid of our staff members. And we've also, you'll see some, if you look at the tables, there's been some adjustments to the wages and the revenues related to both the Douro Community Center and the Warsaw Community Center this year. And some of those changes are in particular reflective or trying to be forecasted in such a way that we recognize that we're doing a major capital project replacing the arena floor, supported by a grant from the province of Ontario. So that facility will be closed, or at least the ice surface or the floor that where the ice is normally will be closed through the summer as we do that renovation. And we recognize that we will lose some rental costs related to that, and we'll have to remove some of the staff around to manage that. And then I would say that part of the process is I asked all staff to be very diligent when they look at all of even the minor expenses within their department and find where we could find savings where and if we can. That yielded a small number, I recognize, but still some savings of $1,139. Slide, please. I'm going to be very brief. We talked at length, I think, on Thursday about the joint public works and fire hall building. What I will note is that since 2022, council has been allocating a portion of the levy every year to that building over the last series of years. This has been increasing each year in order to get our annual debenture. It's not the right way to say it. Debenture, I think, payment to $914,537. Based on the modeling that we've done for that facility and the cost of construction of $12 million with the cost of borrowing on a 20-year debenture, which is in the way we borrow money through Infrastructure Ontario, would be very similar to the way that bonds are issued. What we do, we recognize in order to pay those dollars back, we need to have an annual payment of $914,537. The goal was to take our annual levy increases from 2022 through 2030 to get us to that right level that would be necessary in order to pay the borrowing that we're going to do once we build the facility. What I will note is that I think initially when we did this modeling, we anticipated construction would have been quite some time ago, or at least in the most recent past. And so we would have to be reserving money and putting some of those reserves back in every year to bring up our annual increase at some point to $914,000. We anticipate construction in 2027 and 2026 and 2027. And so what we are expecting, because we've had a longer runway to save some money and to start to grow the amount of money that we're saving for this program, is we're hopeful that there will be a surplus in capital reserves that will help finance some of the other capital requirements we have across the township at that point. But I'm very pleased to see us in a very strong position as we move forward to put aside enough money so that we can actually renew this infrastructure that is so sadly lacking. Slide, please. Departmental summaries. You can go to the next slide. This is an overview of our organizational chart. What I would note in the organizational chart, last year when we brought forward the organizational chart, we showcased a series of new jobs. Series of new jobs is maybe a bit of a stretch. We showcased 2 jobs in the organizational chart and a conversion of 1 job from two part-time contracts to full-time throughout this process. What I will note is we're not proposing any new staff in the 2026 calendar year. The only proposal that we have is under the fire and emergency services branch of our organizational chart, and it's really related to the deputy chief. which we have on a contract employee. We're asking council to consider turning that contract into a full-time position. Slide, please. Corporate services. I'm going to highlight the various capital projects. We spoke to these projects in depth as we went through them, but I will highlight for the public tonight. We have 4 elements in corporate capital projects for 2026. One is an annual IT requirement of $20,000 to the levy. It's the 3rd year that we've put aside funds, or we're asking to put aside funds to help to modernize our computer infrastructure and some of the software programs that we're using, and that's been a very successful program to date. It also helps to ensure our cybersecurity. Second item on the list that we propose is we have budget pre-approval to move forward with a building department service delivery review. Council has, in the initial discussion, I believe that we're hoping to finance this either across the corporation, but we will see council direction as to where specifically you want this financed. I will recognize that some of the funds can come from the building department to cover the cost of the building department's portion of this service delivery review. However, it also involves bylaw as well as planning, which are not part of the building department. So there will be some impact on the levy if council chooses to provide us that direction. I just want to recognize that. Slide, please. Oh, you're there. What I will also recognize is that we have records management software program that we're updating, where this is phase 2 of 3. This project has already launched. The cost over 3 years was $25,000 to the annual levy, and this helps us to develop and implement a digital records management system for the township. And then finally, what I will recognize is the tree planting program. So this is a new addition. This is the only significant addition between Thursday's presentation and today's presentation, and really it's just an oversight of staff. Last year, council, I will note, funded this program at $5,000, not $10,000. This is a very well-received program and has been in place since the derecho in 2022. And was well received, even with half the amount of money and half the number of trees this year. I think it was a very well received program by members of the community. Slide, please. Encased in the presentation is a number of this is the operating table for council for this year. We went through this with members of council. This is just on the screen for the public's benefit. Slide. Corporate services budget for this year. And the election budget for this year. What I will note is that we fund the election over 4 years. Every year we put money in reserves, including next year, to finance the cost of the annual municipal election. Those monies come out from reserves in an election year, which is for next year. And so this is just a representation that we have enough funds. We have enough funding in what we think is necessary to finance the 2026 municipal election. Slide, please. Public Works. Next slide. So in the Public Works project, I think we outlined some of where we hope to do some of our capital works on an annual basis. This is the list of brushing projects. You'll note that we are proposing to do 21.2 kilometers of brushing in 2026 on these various roads. Slide. Capital Works Public Works capital projects. So one of the lessons that we learned this year when we had our ice storm at the end of March and the state of emergency that followed afterwards, that went on for an extended period of time, is that we have a requirement to be more prepared in order to continue to offer services. And two of those things you'll see highlighted in a number of different budgets, but realistically in the Public Works budget, that relates to generators. Where, with extended power outage, in this area, one of the things we had the hardest time finding was generators in order for us to continue to operate in all of the elements of the township as we were working our way through. And so we're proposing the purchase of 2 generators for Public Works. Both of them would be portable. One would be would allow us to maintain operations at Halls Glen Transfer Station. And while we, realistically, it was probably, if we think about what happened in the early spring portion, it was probably one of the busier places in the township, to be quite honest with you, with people bringing brush to drop off, as well as food waste, et cetera. The second one is a portable generator for the roads department. What we will note is both of those are equipped with what we call GenerLink transfer switch hookups, and the ability to buy these generators will help us keep those divisions operating during emergencies when necessary. We also have funds set aside, 26,500 for our culvert and structure inspection program that I believe doesn't happen every year, but certainly happens on a number of different years. Slide, please. We also propose a series of road projects, whether they be surface treatment and or gravel application. The amount of kilometers, the costs associated with those, each of those projects are listed in the presentation and on the screen. What I will say is where we get that information or the direction for that is in the roads needs study that we just completed this summer and was brought to council recently for review and approval. Next slide. For the public's benefit, here's the operating budget for the 2026 Public Works, proposed operating budget for 2026 for the Public Works Division. Fire and Emergency Services. Next slide, please. Okay, what I'll note, the number one capital project that's coming into Fire and Emergency Services is the purchase and replacement of Pumper 1 and Pumper 4. The cost for that replacement is over $1 million. These are pre-budgeted funds that are to come from the capital project reserve and allows us to stay compliant. This is a pre-approved, this council approved the purchase of those fire trucks in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, prior to my arrival. This is how long it takes for them to be produced. And this is what we're paying for them in 2026 because that's when we anticipate they will arrive. I would also note that we have responsibilities to replace our bunker gear on a 10-year replacement plan, and $91,000 is set aside to replace 26 sets, of bunker gear. And I know there was questions related to the lifeline and how that works, and the chief answered those questions on Thursday. And then we're asking for an annual minor equipment replacement fund of $10,000. This fund is actually, I think we see this year over year, depending on what we require, whether it's hoses, monitors, nozzles. It allows us to replace minor yet critical equipment in order for the fire department to do their job. Next slide. The other 3 elements to the capital project we're asking for $5,000 to replace tablets. We have aging tablets that were originally installed in fire apparatuses related to how we help us fight fires. These current devices are outdated, no longer meet performance and storage requirements, and so we're asking for funds to make that replacement. We're also asking for $13,000 on the levy to begin a program of replacing our AEDs. Many of the AEDs in the township are over 20 years old, and they are due for replacement. They are starting to fail. None of them have failed in the field, but they are starting to fail in their testing. And it's time to start that replacement program. We propose to do it over 2 years, and this roughly would replace half of the ones that are required. And then finally, this is the other area of emergency response equipment needs. And so we are proposing, there's an open grant right now that we will apply to, but what we recognized is that when we had the derecho in 2022 and the ice storm in 2025, both of those occasions, we found our emergency response needing specific things in order for that to be successful, and they're very similar. Both of those natural events had very similar outcomes and similar needs, and so we've been applying to a program, granting program that we were hopeful would be successful for us to help provide some of those materials. We have yet to be successful. We're proposing to apply again. However, if we are unsuccessful again, our goal is to, after 3 years, to ensure that we have that equipment in-house, so that if and when we have another emergency situation, we have the right equipment to do the job. Slide, please. Here's the Fire and Emergency Services operating grant budget for 2026. Putting it on the screen for the public's benefit. Okay, Parks and Recreation, next division. We have a series of capital projects certainly related to the parks. The Parks and Recreation Division has come forward and asked for 2 specific things. They'd like council to consider a shade structure for the Douro South Park. This shade structure specifically would be placed near the new pickleball and tennis courts that were built or erected in Douro South Park to provide sun protection for the players. I will say, since the installation of those sport courts, the usage has significantly increased, and this is the #1 piece of feedback we receive from the users. We're also asking for $24,000 to replace the existing wooden stairs that connect the Douro South Park to the to the parking area. Sorry. This project has been on the books, I think, for some time, and certainly if anyone has been to the Douro South Park, those stairs are in desperate need of replacement, which is why we're asking for it. Next slide. Douro Community Center capital projects. So we have 2 projects that are listed there. First and foremost, we're asking for $45,000 to support the replacement of the water treatment system, or upgrading the water treatment system. So first and foremost, the water treatment system in the Douro Community Center is aging, but also what we will note is there is a series of water pressure problems in the building, and we did a bunch of research this year work around to figure out what those issues were, the pressure issues were coming from, and predominantly what we found was that the water treatment system sizes down the piping for the water into the system, and that is one of the ways or results is that we're seeing less pressure in our showers when we have overusage, when we're filling the ice resurfacer. And so we're asking for $45,000 to rectify that problem. While at the same time, we have an ice surface floor replacement policy project. This came before council last year in the budget, and actually prior to the budget, we made an application to the CSRIF grant fund from the province of Ontario. We're successful recipients of $1 million to help offset the cost of ice floor replacement. That project is going forward. We've already reserved some of the capital project reserve funds have been allocated to that project, but that's just it showing in the budget for this year. And then finally, in Parks and Rec, what we're asking for in particular for the Warsaw Community Center is on a semi-regular basis, we need to overhaul the compressors. We're asking $8,000 to do that to support the ice making system and to continue to extend the life of a very old hockey rink. Slide, please. This is the Parks and Rec total operating budget for 2026 proposed. This is the parks proposed operating budget. So what we've done is we've taken the total budget and we've broken it down in the operating tables to parks, allocations to the Douro Community Center, and allocation to the Warsaw Community Center. And that's what Martina is putting on the screen for us right now. Get into planning and development. There are no capital projects proposed in the planning and development area this year. What I will note is there are three budgets that will be contained in the planning and development area. Here's the budget for land use planning. Here's the budget for building services. I will note that in the building services area, the cost of operating that division is not borne by the levy. It's actually borne by permits costs. And so we plan that that budget is planned around that. And then finally, the bylaw, which is not covered by building permit costs, has a small budget to offset some of its operating required costs. We continue. I will go through briefly on behalf of the library some of their budget requirements or requests this year. In the capital area, they've asked for $15,000 contribution to library building improvements and $14,000 for books and materials. They proposed some changes to the operation that would increase library service hours. There are two separate proposals for those increases. What I will say is as part of, so we've had a number of visits or a couple of visits from Maggie over the last series of council meetings, in particular, not the most recent budget meeting, but the meeting prior to that. Maggie came and presented our new library strategic plan. And in that plan called for us to sort of called for the township to get closer to some of the standard operating procedures that happen across libraries. And the first way that they're proposing to do that is to extend some of the hours that are reflective on when the community would like to use the facility the most. And so the proposed, one of the major impacts this year is on that budget, or the primary impact on that budget this year is related to an increase in library service hours that was outlined in their strategic plan and has been and came forward last week in the budget process as well. That's the library's proposed operating budget for 2026 on the screen. All of these capital, so we're at the capital budget tables, and really at all of these capital budget items I've already discussed in the presentation, but we'll put them up on the screen because I think it's helpful to understand where in particular the funding for those projects come from. So we see there's a series of these projects that have funding or requests that are funded through the levy. However, you know, for example, if you look at the vehicle budget line, pumper number 1 and pump number 4, the remaining costs for that project are coming from reserves. I'll note books and materials under the library and their equipment request. The $14,000 comes from a grant. Ice floor replacement is also an interesting one that I draw the council and public's attention to, because if you look at that, there's zero impact on that project on the levy. It either comes from reserves or through a grant from the provincial government. Here's a cost associated to the various projects related to public works. And just to follow up on the final elements of our capital request. What I will note before we get to the last slide is that when we prepared a budget, we set our targets, but that doesn't necessarily mean that covers everything that council had put into that into their sort of desires and or not council but staff and or responses from the public. So We have a list of items that didn't make the cut this year, and we just want to demonstrate to council and the public that there are things that we are contemplating or have contemplated in the past or this year, in particular this year, that we haven't accounted for because we just simply didn't see room for them in this year's budget. Under the corporate services banner, we looked at something like to help develop a guide to the township that could be a glossy print material or digital guide that other jurisdictions use. We also recognize that our front counter is antiquated and in need of some enhancement, and so the proposed cost of enhancing the front counter would be $20,000, which would upgrade the technology as well as the user experience. And we have we need to improve some of the seating in the office, and so we had contemplated $10,000 for that. I will note, when we talked about compensation for staff, every 4 years, staff are mandated to go through to do compensation review and bring a bylaw to council before September of that year. That is on the work plan for staff this year. However, we have a lot of things on the go. And as a demonstration, if we were to have a third party do that work, it would cost about $16,000. From the Public Works perspective, last year we were asked specifically about docking and or new docks or more docks at some of the various spaces that were responsible. So both Crow's Landing and McCracken's are seeing higher volumes these days. Specifically, I think the deputy mayor last year during budget conversation asked about the addition of a new public dock at McCracken's Landing, or one of the locations. The cost for a new dock is $35,000. We put that, and then Councillor Johnston in our discussions after the ice storm asked specifically about putting in the opportunity to drop off brush on an annual basis for the public. We recognize that the cost for us to hold it at the facility isn't $10,000, but once all the brush comes in, it has to be dealt with, whether it's ground up and removed in some form or fashion. And so we anticipate the cost to do that would be between $7,000 and $10,000. Noting that just to do the grinding, we ground up the materials that we received after the ice storm. And one time of that happening was over $15,000 based on the volume materials. So it's not cheap. The third item on the list says heavy, which is that figure I recognize is heavy. Really what I think we were trying to demonstrate is we have a series of capital heavy pieces of equipment that are going to need to be replaced in the Public Works Division as we move forward. And so while we didn't have one item in particular, we are looking towards replacing or updating a backhoe in that division at some point, and that comes at a $300,000 price point. And then at the Warsaw recreation and facilities, a couple of areas that we looked at. I think we talked about we looked at the Warsaw Community Center. The driveway or the driveway into that facility is rapidly aging and coming apart. It needs to be updated and repaired. The cost of doing that is $13,500, or that's what the approximate cost is. I would also note that Warsaw also has an ice resurfacer that we've been repairing, but is very much at the end of its useful life. And we're going to need to make a decision shortly as to what we want to do, whether we want to replace it or not. The cost of replacing an ice resurfacer for people, just out of interest, is over $100,000, $115,000 to be exact. And then we had a request or an inquiry about ways to make revenues, and other jurisdictions are very successfully renting kayaks, et cetera. And so this just an effort to sort of what that could look like if the township was to get involved in that. Would be, just the kiosk itself and the equipment would be $20,000 plus staffing. And so those are sort of some of the projects that we did not put into this year's budget. They are not contained in the budget presentation I made today, but we wanted to have them included as staff because we wanted you to be aware that the list we derived wasn't exhaustive of the projects that we have. We have all manner of projects that we are working towards. And so we just want to put that on a list so that you're aware that we did exercise some restraint when we put our budget together. Anyway, Madam Mayor Watson, that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take questions from council and or work the mic for the public as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, CAO Davis. Before we hand it over for public comment, is there any questions that council has of CAO Davis at this point in time? Deputy Mayor?
Thanks, through the mayor. Just on the parking lot going into the Warsaw Arena. I know there's some other projects going to happen around that time, and just wonder, like, it might be financially to look at that. I don't know whether staff has looked at that with them other projects that are happening, whether that is something that might be advisable to look at with them other projects, or to put it off for another year. That's my question, I guess. Thank you.
Through Mayor Watson to Deputy Mayor Nelson, thank you for the question. It's a very good question. In fact, that's the reason why it's on the list, is we recognize there's other work going on in that area, and the cost to do that work is why it is what it is because we thought we could capitalize on some projects happening in the area, and that would bring our cost down a little bit. It's still pretty expensive, but recognize that it's one of the reasons why it's there and why it didn't make while it didn't make the cut, it is close to the line, which is one of the reasons why we presented it.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Yeah, through the chair. I didn't realize that on the funding for the roads for the Douro fourth line from the County Road 4 to County Road 8 into the village of Douro being 199,400. That is from a grant. So is that grant already like we know we're getting that money?
Through the mayor to Councillor Johnson, yes, that's from the OCIF grant, if I'm not mistaken, which is an annual amount of money that we get from the province of Ontario to help pay for infrastructure improvements in the community. So while it is a grant, the funding source is from outside of the organization. We are not specifically tied to do that project to that road. As if we could use those dollars, and as long as they were to go towards some roads project or one of the roads, we could allocate those funds there. That makes sense.
Any other questions of CAO Davis? Seeing nothing further from council, this is the point where we get to hear from the public. So before I open up the chambers, Madam Clerk, are there any written comments that have come through since the budget was posted?
Madam Mayor, we've not received any written comments and we have no participants on Zoom.
Oh, you read my mind. I was going to ask that question next. Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, we'll open the chambers, open the floor to any questions or comments. Again, one at a time, don't get in a line. I invite you to join us at the lectern and state your name for the record. And we're open to hear any questions or concerns or ideas. Okay, we've got somebody come on up. I'll just remind you, sir, as well as anyone else, 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. Read through the whole budget, looked at it. That it's tough to think that we're going up 5% roughly every year. I mean, some of us can afford it. Been blessed enough that we're able to manage that, or we've got our properties paid for. But there's an awful lot of people in our township that are really struggling. And when these taxes keep going up, it's really tough for some of them to even know how they're going to manage to buy bread that week. So I'm not sure that as much as we have to struggle to get the township to work, we got to really be paying attention a lot to what these increases are. And I'm glad to see there's a number of things that didn't get included. Thank you. That was important. Council orientation kind of set me back when I looked at it on the budget, on the fact that if I was wanting to be on council, I think this is for the new council members, is it, or is that for everybody? For new council members, I would think that they should be able to go out and learn something on their own if they want to invest in being in the township, to put some of their own money and own time into learning what it takes to be a counselor. I know when I was looking at it a few years ago, I read everything in the bylaw stuff for the township before I even decided that I might want to do that. And I just think that they should be able to put some of their own money into it. Also, the tree planting program. I know it's $10,000, but the people that are getting that, are these people that can afford to buy it and they would be buying it regardless, or they don't buy them here, do they? This is given out free?
They pay for a portion of the tree. Historically, the municipality has purchased a large quantity, getting a
To get a
significant
discount?
discount. And then the funds are rolled back into that. But I believe there's going to be a report coming forward from staff on that program, and because we just did the tree handout in early September.
Okay,
But
so,
we're going to see more information on that before we make a decision.
so there's some money that comes back that people purchase purchase the trees for a discount.
That's correct.
Okay, well, that's better. It's just that if we put too much money in there, I'd rather see it come off the end result for the tax, because the people can afford to buy it anywhere likely. It's the people that don't need it, or don't even know the program is there, don't get one. I mean, I didn't even know what time it was coming up when I was at council. When I heard it mentioned that there was going to be one of these, I didn't even know it happened. Is that my fault? Likely. The other concern was the building department. Of course, I deal with that a lot, but Harold, I appreciate you calling me when you did and talking to me about what I gave to council on it, my concerns. It concerns me that we're spending $14,000 for a consultant, 40,000. I knew that. Anyhow, 40,000 for a consultant. I can't understand why we don't talk to the people that deal with the budget, deal with that department about the concerns that are happening, because we deal with several departments around the county on applications and everything else, and why we're spending $40,000 for somebody that's going to come back and maybe not give you any direct changes that have to happen. A lot of the things happen because they're in the building code or the national building code that have to happen, but there's a lot of stuff internally here that's happening that isn't correct. And a lot of that stuff, I mean, Ray, you went a year ago, last spring, and said, we're going to change that. They are going to work on the Fridays and be open. That cloud system, they've never been open on the Friday since you passed it in the council that they would pay attention to that and be open on Fridays. That has never happened. So I'm not sure how much control you have as a council or the operating system in the township to make sure that these things run correctly, because that's absolute nonsense. I mean, I needed an inspection. I can't get it because they only operate 4 days a week. And if I come into this township, I can't even go to the front desk and get somebody. I'm lucky if I get somebody to come up, and you definitely don't want to call because all you get is a voicemail. Like, there's so many things internally like that that really frustrate me and other contractors. And there's a lot of contractors who would be more than happy to be willing to sit and discuss. And I'm not saying make the changes, but to discuss it and give you the options of what his concerns and how it works in other townships. I mean, I still have City of Peterborough and Norwood still give you a yellow slip when they come to do your inspection, so you know you got it. We're lucky if it gets on the cloud right away and don't even know. Anyhow, thank you for your time. I do respect your position and what you do, so don't take that wrong from me coming up here and talking about it. I respect what you do. I just think there's a lot of little things that keep going under the table and are being dealt with that you vote for. It just doesn't seem to go anywhere. Anyhow, thank you very much.
Before you step away, sir, although you're known to many of us, could you please state your name for the record?
Turn this back on, and yes, I will. Should have done that first. I'm Jim Mollahan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Come on up. Gotta hit the button. Thank you.
My
You're
name's
on.
April Hope. I didn't bring my red pen because I hope to go through this in more detail after, but I did want to go back. So in 2021, our taxes increased 3.9%. In 2022, 3.61%. In 2023, 5.04%. In 2024, 7.4%. And then now 2026 proposing 4.8% tax increase. Now, I don't know when the next round of assessments come out, but I work 6 days a week. I am looking at this and I'm looking at staff telling me that they scrounged up a measly $1,139 of savings. That is a month of groceries for me. So I'm not quite sure when the austerity measures start kicking in, but they need to start kicking in. This is not sustainable. And I hate that word, I'm so sorry, but this is not sustainable for the local people around here who want to raise their kids. I don't want to be able to not be able to pass on my home to my children. Currently, as it stands, it's almost impossible. Like I don't understand how, first of all, Douro has not grown. Our targets are so low. So what it seems like is happening is you're pulling the money more and more and more out of the people who live here. And eventually it's going to hit a crisis point. We cannot afford it anymore. I was hoping last year, Ray, when you said, I think you were talking to the treasurer, and you said, it's time. People are suffering. People are suffering. The economy is not good right now. It is not a good place right now, Douro, to do any development. It's not a good place to grow a business. I would like to be able to grow my business. I would like to be able to hire my friends' children, the local people, so that they can stay in this community and then we can have a future here. But how, it was at 25% in 5 years since this council has been in here, 25% increases to my taxes. Like I've been going through everything. I'm looking at this. I don't see how, like there's some, again, I don't want to get into the details right now. I will do that in the future. Something's missing. Something's missing. I don't see how we can look around at the economy, around everything that's happened in the past 5 years and say, for example, we need a shade sale at the pickleball courts. No, we don't. I don't see how we can have what is our population? 7,500 people? Look at how much we spend on employees. What is the median income? I guarantee a majority of our corporate employees make more than the median income of one single family home in this community. When I was growing up, I grew up here. I can tell you, now back when I was a kid, I didn't care about the services, obviously. There's not been an enhanced improvement to the services here in Douro-Dummer. My garbage often doesn't get picked up on time. My roads don't always get plowed when I need them. But yet I'm looking at a 25% increase in taxes over 5 years. What am I missing? What am I missing? And I'm hearing from people from the community, like when we're talking about people not being able to pay our taxes and saying, wow, that's a revenue, that is somebody's home. That is somebody's life in our community. There's something wrong. There's a disconnect. I see bureaucratic bloat. Some of the craziest bureaucratic bloat for a community that doesn't have a grocery store anymore. What am I missing? I don't know. What's going on? We say this budget is transparent, but what exactly is contracted services? That every single dollar in this budget is my money. Every single dollar in my money that I don't get to choose who it goes towards, who it pays. And I'm going to be honest, things are getting tight for a lot of people. People are having a hard time when it comes to paying their taxes for services that have nothing to do with me. I'm not talking about capital investments. Don't get me wrong. But for example, when we had the ball games at the Ball Diamond, it wasn't Parks and Rec that came and made sure that property was good enough to have hundreds and hundreds of families from all kinds of other municipalities come and play ball for our kids at those. It was the dads. The dads picked up the garbage. The dads watered the lawn. So I'm just saying, at what point are we tightening our belts and having the real hard conversations that this is not a sustainable future for this community and something's got to give?
Ms. Hope, you're past the 3-minute
Oh,
mark.
sorry.
I
I'm done.
understand. I wasn't going to cut you off for that reason. Wait, was there, you're good?
Perfect timing.
Thank you. Any other members of the public want to share their thoughts, concerns, ideas? Sir?
So my name is Peter Leahy. The problems that we have are not unique to Douro, in my estimation. Like Otonabee has the same problems, everywhere has the same problems. One question I have, the police budget, if it's 11%, are we paying the whole shot or does the province pay on top of that? Right, like the police does 28, they do County Road 8, which would be county. Are we paying the whole shot or it's shared?
I'll let CAO Davis might have an answer. Not a good answer, but an answer can add a little bit of light to that. Oh, gosh, sorry.
Through the mayor to the Mr. Leahy. The way that I understand it is, I mean, we don't, so that the OPP budget for all of Peterborough County, we are assessed a portion of it. So our assessment portion, based on whatever local services we're getting, the number of calls that happen within our community, all go into the equation that tell us how much money we have to pay on an annual basis.
So there's police, there's fire, there's roads. I don't know enough about it to know what we can do about that. It's kind of a fixed cost. So for instance, back to the trees, I'm in favor of planting trees, but are the consumers paying roughly half?
I believe the consumers have paid less than roughly half of what
I buy thousands of trees every year to plant, and I always end up paying half. Because there's lots of programs that RBC or Gale and Weston put out. So we shouldn't be giving them away. It should be, when I heard they were doing it, I missed out on it, but I thought, okay, well, they're getting those 1,000,000 trees for free and passing them out. But to do this in 3 minutes, is there ever a thought on our farm, there's all kinds of stuff I need to do, but I can't afford it. Is there ever a thought in the township to run it like that? To just stop and say, okay, something's got to give here because everybody's paying the shot and they're struggling. We're all struggling. I'm sure you're struggling too. Everything costs more and more. Is there ever a thought just to say, we're going to pass the budget at 0% even for this year? Maybe next year we have to go a little increase, but what April said is right. This can't keep going on. Or we're going to double our taxes in no time. There's lots more I could say, but that's my point.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Come on up. That's right. So I think, the fair answer is there were a number of items that CAO Davis had presented in the budget that weren't in the budget, right? A number of items, I have them listed here. Right, so that's, they didn't, right now, the budget that we're looking at, that council is sitting down and that the public is seeing is what staff have discerned are needs, wants, whatever, however we classify that. The items that were left out of the budget was staff saying, you know what, now's not the time to bring that forward for whatever reason, but identified a need, to us to flag them to council. So, the next stage, tonight and beyond, over the next several weeks, it's council's job to ask the questions, do we really need that? And I can say over past budget sessions, we've taken items out of the budget. We've said we don't really need that, right? Could I ask you to come to the microphone? Just again, because when you're not at the microphone, the online audience can't hear the dialogue, and we need to ensure that for
It's not
transparency.
a Douro problem. This is a worldwide problem where every country is overspending and we're going more and more into debt. At some point, this has to stop. Whether it's a revolution or what, I don't know, but does Douro ever consider saying, we're gonna do this at 0%? Some things are gonna give, but that's the way it has to be. Because when I pay my bills, that's what I have to do. I don't understand why governments don't have to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Deputy Mayor, please turn on your mic.
Peter, thanks a lot for your questions. And I want to answer that question. And some of that questions, if you look at what our budget is that we actually have control over, is 1.9%. So it's not 4.8%. And even if you look at the percentage, it doesn't equate to, you got to look at how much it actually means to each property owner. But having said that, the provincial government sends us mandates that, for example, the roads, we have no choice other than pay the bill, and we have to go out and provide a level of service to the public that all of Ontario has to provide that level of service. So when we look at fuel costs, we look at insurance costs, them are out of our control. We have no control over that as a council on how much that costs go up. And we also don't have any control over the level of service. So if you want to change the level of service within this municipality, it takes a higher level of government to change that so that that cost don't even keep on going on. It's the same thing with the police. The police last year, we were floored by the amount of money that the police actually wanted. So now they've come out and said, I'm not happy about it, but at least they put 11, like I think last year it was close to 25%. I believe the police services wanted out of each municipality. And the province then, because we were all hollering as councils to the province about that. So you got to look at a 0% increase. We do this township no favor by doing that. Again, the fire services, they have rules and regulations that we have to meet. We have to meet all of that. So this is where the breakdown happens, that a lot of people don't understand that as our staff and as council, we have no choice in that. We can't just say, oh, we want it. At one time, there was 0% increases. And I sat right here as a staff person thinking, because guess what? Then it caught up to us as the township. I don't like paying taxes any more than anybody else, but we are a business, and this business has to, either the level of service has to drop in order for it to give a zero tax increase. Either that or we don't spend any money with. And it's very hard once you don't spend money on roads or other stuff that we have to keep going as a municipality. Another thing that's happened also, it's very unfortunate. The cost of equipment has like a fire truck has went to over $1 million. Like, I'm saying, throwing these numbers out there loosely, but compared to like 4 years ago, they were 500,000. Now they're $1 million. So if we don't, we're handcuffing ourselves and not getting the services that we're mandated to provide. So I hope you can understand that we really, if you look at what decisions we got, like, I'm not saying like the tree planting, that's a minor thing. We can cancel that. Like what we can actually cancel is on the bottom line on the budget, mean nothing. It really does. It really means pardon me? A breakdown of what? It's all line by line item there. Whether we cancel it or whether we keep it in, it's a line by line. That's how much it's costing taxpayers or where the money is coming from. It's all spelled out there, where that money is coming from. A lot of it is insurance companies. Oh, so let me tell you this. Cyber, there's organizations out there, I don't know who they are, but they actually attack municipalities because we got the deep pockets. So there's different municipalities and staff can actually tell you who they are. I know some of them, but I won't say who they are, but they've been held ransom for millions and millions of dollars. And so we're trying to stay ahead of that in having the proper software, having all that stuff so that we don't get dinged with millions of dollars by being held hostage and not upgrade our systems. That would be ridiculous for us to do that and not protect our residents from being held hostage. So to spend that small amount is minimal and you got to keep it up. And if unfortunately you have to keep computer systems up. People are working at these computer systems every day. We don't come in here and, oh, here's a piece of paper and write it down. We got computer systems that work all that stuff. And if you don't keep it up, guess what? We're on the hook from somebody, and it could be cyberspace. Like they run a business to do that. If you understand what I'm saying, the evil, I guess, in the world, and that's what they do, and they hold us hostage at that.
Deputy
So
Mayor,
we have to pay it a little bit.
I'm going to ask you to
Sorry.
tailor, pare down
Thank
your
you.
comments, if that's okay. And we have somebody who wants to get up to the lectern to speak. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sam Turner, for those of you that don't know me. And I would say that I'd like to just preface with the fact that my comments come from a place of owning and running multiple businesses in neighboring townships. I reside here in Douro, right on Clifford. And I understand many of your points, and even Harold, like I run businesses. I have millions of dollars that I'm budgeting for every year and staffing, but also the services that come into that. And as a resident of Douro, I can personally and professionally say that I think a lot of the disconnect actually comes from that service element. And I think a lot of the stress that I'm seeing from other residents and clients and stuff trying to do business and live and develop here in Douro-Dummer is the issue specifically from the services or lack thereof within this building. And it's not necessarily council members. When I walk in here and I try and get a building permit, or I try and get an email answered, it's not you guys that are doing those things. So it is a staffing piece. So when we are all sitting in this room and we're looking at the budget and we're seeing how much money this township is spending on staffing and the service is mediocre, it doesn't feel great. And I think if you want to run a successful business, which you guys are in many ways trying to do here, you have to figure out better ways to be servicing the members here and then also bringing new members to the community. Geographically, we're in a perfect spot for development, but God forbid you ever tried to do that here or had the wallet to even jump through enough hoops to do that. The building department here is hellish to try and conduct any sort of business with, which also goes off the point as to why are we considering spending $40,000 on a third-party assessment of that. I think there are many level-headed human beings that are trying to do business here that you could save that money for and have a town hall meeting and maybe have that third party there to like receive the information. But I have also sat in on other sessions here in Douro-Dummer that you're bringing in these other third parties to conduct surveys and bring in this information. And they're incredibly biased. They come in with a tone that they would like to complete and it's pushed onto us in those. So I would really encourage council to look at that $40,000 amount and figure out other ways that you could be utilizing that. And then when looking at the budget, so maybe this is a question for you, Todd, is that for the 2026 projections, on the first couple pages, there's 0 for reserves. We have no idea what we're shuffling over from 2025?
I don't, sorry. That's fine.
So you have 0 reserves kind of here for the operating budget.
So that's specifically, you're talking to the corporate services portion of the budget. So
Yeah,
I
so
think
it-
there are a limited number of, so we have reserves. We
Okay.
have a series of
Just getting a little bit of order here. Could you give us the page number? We can put it on the screen so everybody can see that, please? Or what the title is of the report? Okay. Okay, we're going to pull that up on the screen, that particular chart. Sorry to interrupt, and both of you will need to turn your microphones back on again because I killed them.
Sorry.
That's okay. Through the mayor, to Ms. Turner. So the question you're asking about specifically is drawing on reserves for the corporate operating budget, which is up here now. So the transfer from reserve and to reserves, what you'll note is it's at $20,000. The only only monies we reserve in the corporate budget on an annual basis is to offset the cost of the election every 4 years. We don't typically put, we transfer money to reserves all the time. In fact, we have quite a healthy capital project reserve, specifically as we're raising funds for construction on a new public works fire station in just north of Warsaw here. That's where most of our reserves go, but traditionally, we don't typically draw on or contribute to reserves in the corporate area because we just don't have a ton of capital. Typically, you may raise or have reserves in particular to offset a larger scale capital project or something, a project that's in the future. But in corporate services, we don't tend to have those kinds of things. They tend to be related to other divisions of the corporation.
Okay, so if residents wondered how we are spending our money each year, and I guess we can see that within the total budget, but we would want to review further, like the operating budget than there, we're lotting reserves for, sorry, I have young-ish eyes. But there are more reserves allotted in further spreadsheets, so that's where we should be looking.
Yes. So just to be clear, in the operating tables, as you get to, so into different areas, so we look at here, in terms of reserves, this is the public works operating table. If you note, I will note that we are contributing to reserves in the we're proposing a contribution in 2026 of $22,600 into reserve.
Yeah.
Those funds don't tend to be then brought out of reserves to offset operating costs. They tend to be put into reserves for longer term capital projects. So that capital reserve, would likely be what we use to fund heavy equipment in the future, maybe a new backhoe or a new. Right now, this year, we just received a new snowplow to replace an aging one. The costs, the money that we brought forward to do that came out of reserve. So we contribute small amounts every year, and then eventually we pull on that to buy a bigger piece.
And maybe that's just a piece of feedback for when we're doing these things. Everybody has a different financial literacy level. So I ask those questions because I know we're all at varying scales in this room, and social media is a beast sometimes. And we put all this information available, but not everybody knows how to read what reserves are and things like that. So I understand why you have a slush fund, but not everybody knows how to read those. So maybe you would get less backlash if that was explained.
Through the mayor, I just would also highlight the fact that we are having an open house on Thursday. And one of the reasons that we decided to do that this Thursday is recognizing that not everybody wants to come up and ask the question on the podium, on a camera, for fear that they may be misinformed or they may not understand what they're asking. And so one of the reasons why we very much want to have this open house opportunity is for any resident can come and ask those questions in an environment that doesn't sort of project it to the world and get recorded for the world to see. I make gaffes all the time that are recorded on the internet for posterity. It's not fun, and so I recognize why that would be the case.
I was going to say, so do I for a living. So I totally get it. And I love the idea of creating that less formal opportunity for people to come in and ask questions to individual people. But you know what? I think that Douro-Dummer has so much potential. And I think we have seen the disconnect in the last 10 years from the province for the MPAC assessments. And I know I'm almost close to my time, so I'll cut this short. Is that they have deferred reassessing our properties for the last 10 years. They have not said when they're going to start that again. And if you would like to continue being great members on council, I would urge you to think about what these tax increases do in the long run, because I sell a lot of real estate in Douro-Dummer. And I can tell you the same houses that I was selling on South Street 8 years ago for $200,000, I'm now selling for $700,000 plus dollars. And that's reflective across the township. And that eventually will creep up on residents here. And I think that you guys have a due diligence to think about that, even though you may not still be a member or all those types of things. It's just that will eventually creep up on people because real estate went like this, and we all were a part of that. So I would keep that on your mind while you're considering the increase. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. From the microphone, just so that we can, yep.
Again, to the same thing. I just had a question, like, speaking of the reserves, I was really interested in that because I've been going back and trying to like get an idea. Like, one thing when we're looking at the budget and we're looking at the future, and there's this thing where we're looking at last year or this year, I guess, technically the budget that was budgeted for this year. Where do we find where we stand on our reserves? Like, where is the breakdown of that so that we know how much is in each of those? Like, 2021, where did we stand? What did we have to pull out? Where 2022, where do we go from there? Like, it would be nice as a, fiscally conscious member of this public to be able to see a good breakdown of, in 2021, we had to pull this much, or we worked towards putting in that much for that year, but just like a clear, concise 2020, 2021, 2022, where are reserves at?
So I'm seeing nobody going to be jumping in on this. Ms. Grenier, you're going to jump in? Our new treasurer, who has been on the job
Perfect.
for a week. So just, we tread cautiously on this one.
Hi, if you look at the audited financial statements on the website, all the reserves are explained and listed there.
Yes, so
on
great.
those.
Yes, and I have all of those. I've looked through all of them, but I mean, I'm talking about for just, we're here, it's again, our taxes have gone up 25% in 5 years. That's a lot of money. Might be nice for the regular layman, all of us to just see what exactly our cumulative savings have been, where they sat per year, 2020 to now. I think like really clear and concisely. Because like that reserve comment is something that I've heard lots of people talk about. I do know that there was a few years there around the time of the election where the budgets show 0 for all our reserves. So I'm not sure there was something questions going around at that time. It'd just be nice, I mean, just as a going forward to maybe include that in the budget rather than what we're going to put in, what we're going to spend, what are we sitting at?
Thanks.
Any other questions from the gallery, comments, feedback? Deputy Mayor from the gallery? No. I'm just kidding.
I feel it's important, thanks, through the mayor. I feel it's important for you people or all you residents to actually understand this. And I'm more than happy to sit down with any one of you or talk to you about what my experience is or what I know about the township as far as budgets, and I've done a lot of them, done 16. I was here for over 16 years and looked after the public works. So I definitely know a lot about budgets and about that part of the budgeting and the rest of the budgets as well. But when we were having 0% increases at this township, other townships weren't. And I can tell you, we have one of the lowest tax rates in the county besides Lakefield, Selwyn. And it's because of other things that happened there, but we still have one of the, if you look at all the other townships, we have one of the lowest tax rates. I have a friend, same size of house, basically roughly the same lot. He pays half the taxes I pay. And I'm going to use me as an example because I'm a taxpayer too. I built a house in '88. My taxes at that time were $1,700 for an acre lot and my house and garage. That same house today, 30 years later, more than 30 years, 38 years to be exact, or 37, and around there. Anyways, my taxes are still just a little over $2,800. I can't even go out and plow my road for $2,800 a year. So when I look at the taxes, and I don't buy that, I have to pay for my services I get, my garbage, my police, and this council chamber really has not a lot of say in what them rates are, because guess what? Contracts come up, everything happens. Fuel goes up, insurance, all of that stuff that's out of our control. The same thing as you do have expenses for your house, the township does as well. And we have to provide them services to all of our people. And it's not that we're sitting here to want to raise the taxes. We have to stay in business. We have a business to run. And unfortunately, it costs money to run the business. So we're at 1.9% of what we can actually spend. And we will be making some decisions on maybe cutting some other stuff, but in the big picture, we have no control over that. But I can tell you that I am pretty proud of this township that we do have the tax rates that we do compared to other ones. And I put this out there, please check out other our neighbors, check it out and see what their tax rate is going to be this year. And from what I'm seeing at the county level, we're, we're, we're far from, being the top at looking for to increase some costs. So that's my statements and my comments, and I think us on council, we hear you. We honestly do. But we don't have a lot of say about what we can do. A 0% increase is stupid. We can't give a 0% increase. When you go to work every day, and that come up about our employees too. We're losing employees. I've never seen employees being lost because other people, other municipalities are paying more money. So guess what? We train them, we get them all set, and then they're gone. They're gone because we're not paying enough money to keep them employees. So, and if you think not, you need to start looking around at how many employees we went through in the last while. We went through a lot at truck drivers, every one of them, they've gone. Like not everyone, but you know what I'm saying? A lot of them have gone, they've migrated. People have no loyalty anymore. The younger crowd will run to wherever the highest dollar is made. So if we're not competitive in that, guess what? We don't have workers, or we don't have trained workers or skilled workers, and it costs money to do that. So that's my comment.
Thank you for your comments, Deputy Mayor. Okay, folks, so at this point, Councillor Johnston and Councillor Watt? Sorry.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment, is that I was on council those years back, 20, 30 years ago kind of thing, when we did have zero increase for a lot of years. I won't say zero always, but it was always 1 or 2 at the most. I think a couple of times we went to 3 and people went crazy on us. But I was around then, and then the problem was at that time, and people like Harold would say to us, you're a fool because it's going to come back and bite you. Well, the thing was, it didn't at that time because we survived on using the equipment we had for a longer period of time and doing things. But as the things changed and the population started to grow, and there are more vehicles on our roads, like school buses and more garbage pickup and all this kind of stuff that wasn't there before, all of a sudden, we were getting behind, and we did get behind. And so I look now at what we see here, and I ran on the election that I would keep the cost down to the taxes. That was my most important thing. And I'm still heading that way. I still want to do that, and I still make a comment every year on that, even though it doesn't sometimes go anywhere. But from my heart, that's the way I got to do it. Because, I'm involved in a lot of different things. And I talk to people all the time. And yes, there's a lot of people out there hurting. A lot of people that we don't know that are hurting. And therefore, I must say that everything's cost money. And one of the biggest things that we got right now that's the biggest percentage of our thing is the public works and the fire building that we're going to put up. The cost of that, as we talked about that, I don't know, 8 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever it was going to be a couple million. Now it's whatever it be, 16 million. It's just things have just gone crazy in all aspects of life. It's just have gone crazy. And therefore we're caught in the middle of trying to hold back and trying to survive with the services we provide. So all I can say is that I'm there for the public 100% and trying to keep things down the best we can. And we will be looking at this report here in another public meeting, that we will be trying to hear what you're saying. And I do respect what you're saying, because we're all in this together. And so I just want to make that comment that things have changed so much. Like I remember I bought a lot of ice machines. I bought a lot of them, and they were 30,000 then. They were just mentioned on the paper. There's 100,000. So that things have changed so drastic. So, anyways, I'm here to say that we are listening to you, and thanks for your comments. And we're not done yet.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Watt?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I want to thank everyone that showed up tonight and for the comments that people got up and said. Hopefully we'll hear more on Thursday night when we have the open house here. We do appreciate it. We do hear what you say. It's a tough one. And I know you all know that. It is a tough one to be in this position and hear the stories of, hey, as it was said here, some people can afford it, some can't. They're right on that borderline thing like that. All I can say is we do our best to keep things to the status quo at least. There's lots of years we don't go ahead, but even to not go ahead, the costs to not go ahead with projects and stuff like that that you wanted to do, or to keep the projects you did last year at a constant level, which we're mandated to do on a lot of them, it costs that much more every year. So it's a very, very tough one, but I certainly do appreciate all the comments tonight, and I look forward to council debating, what we can do with this budget and whether we can change some stuff, whether we can take some stuff out. It's not easy, but thank you very, very much.
Okay, so delegates can only speak twice in a public meeting. Did you want to come up, Miss? I was going to say your name, but I'll let you say your name for well, And then we've got Councillor Lansman. Yep.
My name is Donna Peacock. I'm a resident here. I was born and raised here on the second line of Dummer. And then we went to Douro-Dummer. One comment that I didn't catch your name, I'm sorry, made about holding everything, if all possible. As you all know, I have gone to Newfoundland for the summer, last year and this year. Where I have my half-acre lot, I pay no taxes. I have fire protection. I have road protection and snowplow, everything else. I know they don't get as much snow as what people think. I get garbage pickup once a week. I get recycling done. If you take your plastic bottles and collect them yourself, you can take them to a depot and they will give you cash. Or you can donate your money to a Scouts, Girl Guides, churches, everything like that. So on her comment we don't need a building permit to build a house. We do not need, the only permit we need to have is a septic system, which is $50. The guy comes out, digs the hole himself, and also gives you the certificate when it's done and helps you fill out the form. We are on a private road, but we do have snow plowing on it. It's just something to stop and think about. With her comment, maybe it's time just to on hold. And one thing I know my husband's not going to be too proud of me saying, or Jim, is the fire department, the chief gets $800 a year. But we do have fire protection. And this past summer, the forest fires, were a half an hour away from our trailer. So we had our bags ready. We had people ready to take us to a safe spot. But that was all done through the fire department. That's just something, put it on hold.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Peacock, for your comments. Councillor Lansman, you were going to speak.
Thank you. Through the mayor. Listening to all the comments you people made, it sounds foolish, I know, but I know exactly how you feel. It's something that's almost a no-win situation, and it makes you want to kind of stand back and take another look at things. And thank you all for all your input, because it came from the heart. There's no doubt about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsman, for that. Okay, council, at this point, looking up to make sure there's nobody else with their hand up in the gallery. At this point, we will look to close the public meeting at 6:50 PM. Deputy Mayor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Johnston. All in favor? And that motion carries. That's okay. So at this point, council, we have the option, if there's anything in particular you want to make motions for, as it relates to the budget, keeping in mind there will be other opportunities for council to do that, should you choose. This isn't a one and done kind of pass, but this would be a time to make any of those suggestions as, so staff can go back and make those alterations on the fly. Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Landsman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I got a couple of items that I would like to put forward if I can get a seconder for it. And that is, I'd like to see canceling the tree program. We ran it because of the deratio and we ran it again last year without a lower budget, but I feel that if people really want their own trees, they can go and buy the trees the same as anybody else. And it's not a program. Don't get me wrong. I think it was a great program and it was a great recovery for a lot of trees that we lost within the township. And I wish that we could carry on with it, but I would move to remove that program. My next comment would be on the sun shelter over at.
How about we
Oh,
pause you there? You've got one motion on the floor for that,
Yeah.
and instead of trying to do it as a big
Sure,
one? Yeah.
sure, no, that's.
Does anyone want to second that motion?
I'll second the motion for the discussion. Okay, my comment is that it was said earlier that we got a report coming to us. So I mean, not that I'm not in favor of cutting it, but I'd still like to see what they had on the report, what they're suggesting.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? I'll speak to the motion then as well. I agree with Councillor Johnston. I happened to be there, as I think other members of council were there, to help hand out trees when people came to pick up their trees. And, saw and engaged with a number of the residents who were coming in to pick those up. And while there, had an opportunity to spend some time chatting with staff about the administration of the program and the costs and potential savings. So I don't support the motion as it sits currently, because I fundamentally believe that staff, the report that's coming forward, is going to present some options that will be less of a financial burden on the budget, the $10,000. As well, I believe there's been a new grant, as one of our delegates had mentioned, there's lots of grant programs that are available, and a new grant was announced in the last 48 hours that we may be able to tap into to leverage that. So, I'm not ready to make the decision to pull that out until I see more information at this point in time. So I don't support the motion as it sits. But I will leave it at that and then call for the vote. Oh, Councillor Landsman, I apologize.
To the mayor, is it any good if we delay this motion for a week, or when you say this information's coming?
I believe staff are going to be preparing a report to come to council at our next council meeting as
Oh,
we're
okay.
going through the budget process. So I'm not supporting the motion because I want to see more information. I don't think it makes sense to delay the motion. I think there's a motion already on the floor, and then we can re-look at that when a report comes forward and we have some information, as far as I'm concerned. But
Thank you.
any other comments from council? On that, then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that motion fails. Deputy Mayor, I'm going to go back over to you because I think you were going to make another budget recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we remove the sunscreen. I feel that, maybe, some fundraising from the people that use that facility might be in order and maybe they could do some fundraising and help out and even come back to council and say, you know, we'd like to raise some money. I am totally against putting up, I believe we should be putting up, if we're going to put up steel on the roof and instead of, the material, the fabric material of whatever it is that we got to replace every 5 years. If we do it right, I know it's going to cost more money, but if we can get some fundraising within the community to do that, I feel that would be a help. And my recommendation or my thoughts is that we go with a different product on the roof. So I'll make that motion.
Thank you very much. Counselor Landsman, to second that motion? Okay, does anyone want to speak to that motion? Counselor Johnston?
Maybe staff can help me here, but we are charging for the use of the field there. And that goes to, that also could help to pay for that. There is revenue being made and right now the usage is good, except for the time of year. But anyways, I think that it's a very, very popular thing, what's going on, and it's good for the people to get out and do some exercises and that. But so I do think there is money being, the revenue is coming in to help support that. And maybe staff could just tell us how much came in. roughly
Scared Davis,
speaking.
can you provide a little bit of insight? I had notes on that from the previous presentation. I can't find them though.
Through the mayor to Councillor Johnson, yes, there are revenues that are associated with that the users of the pickleball courts. I don't know specifically the number, but I certainly will have it at a future meeting for you. I know that the manager of that division, Mike Moot, spoke to that specifically. That question was asked and he was able to answer. He's just not here today.
Thank you, CEO Davis. I did just pull up my notes and I do have usage for the pickleball courts was at 192 hours for the season so far, I believe, but I don't know what we charge per hour offhand to do that math, just for clarification. Any other discussion on the motion? Again, I'll speak to this. I support this motion. I personally, with actually people in this room, flipped burgers to raise money to upgrade the fire hall park a great number of years ago. When I was elected, worked with the residents around Clintonia Park and the residents around Daleview Park to make improvements on both of those parks. And there was a community component to that. And while I believe the pickleball courts are an amazing asset for the park and for the township, and they're well used, people from outside of the community often approach me and comment about what a great park, but what a great pickleball facility that we have. You know, in my mind, I think that there should be some sort of user initiative to engage people who are enjoying that facility, as opposed to putting that on the general levy. I'm not saying they necessarily have to fundraise for the entire project, but some sort of initiative to show that somebody besides the overall taxpayers and the overall levy has some skin in the game. And quite frankly, we know that when, you know, people do have a little bit of community ownership, there's that community pride, and people take better care of that facility or are stewards of that facility. So I don't support moving forward with that at this time. And if there is a community group that wants to help lead the way in doing some fundraising for that, then I would entertain it at that time. So I don't support having it forward. I do support the motion, I guess, is the opposite, is to remove that. If there's no further discussion, Councillor Johnston?
Yeah, through the chair, can I hear the motion, please?
Through Madam Mayor, as I understand the motion from Deputy Mayor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Landsman, it is to remove the sunscreen from the pickleball courts. There's also discussion about asking the users to fundraise or use a steel roof. I would recommend that that could be a second motion if that comes to pass.
And just for clarity, we're not removing them, we're just removing them from the budget.
That's
They're not there and we're taking them down, just for clarity. They don't exist yet. Okay, so any further questions? Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that motion carries. Deputy Mayor, were there others that you were going to go? Any, okay. Any other motions or discussion at this point on items related to the budget? You see thinking hats are on. Counselor Watt?
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it's tough right now. We've heard some good information here tonight, you know, and to sit here in half an hour and try and go through some of it and go through this again, like I'd like to sit down for a couple of days here myself and just say, okay, hey, you know, this was a good comment tonight. That was a good comment. I think Mr. Mollahan spoke about the council orientation thing, you know, so maybe that's something we could look at doing in-house and take that off, you know, but, you know, I know there's things like that, but anyway, that's my comments that I'd really like to go over this next couple of days, not just make any jump things tonight on more than what we've already done.
Thank you, Counselor Johnston.
Yeah, I'd like to close the public meeting.
I'd like to speak first, please. No, we already have closed the public meeting. We already passed that motion. We're now doing the council deliberation in the agenda. I do want to Councillor Watt's point, I mean, we've received a lot of great feedback from folks here today. It's a lengthy document. We've taken time to go through it. Obviously, people in the gallery have taken time to go through it, and there's more people who are likely not here this evening that will be reaching out to us in the process. But in the spirit of getting more information, I'd really like to request that staff give us some more information. It's been kind of, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong document. It's been, I've heard skirting around this over the last couple of staff presentations on the building, the $40,000 building department review. It would be great if we could get a breakdown of what a proper apportioning the budget could be on that. As CIO Davis had referenced in his presentation on the budget, you know, it spans multiple departments, being planning, bylaw, and building, but the building department could, in theory, pay for that cost, which would come out of the building department's budget, which isn't a burden on the tax levy in any capacity. So I would look to ask for staff to bring a report back to let us know what that costing could look like, or how it would be portioned, if it's evenly divided by 3, or how that would work, so that we can make a better informed decision on that. I can make that motion. And if somebody would second that, to have a report come forward. Councillor Johnston, any discussion on that? All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so seeing no further discussion on the budget, we are going to move on with our agenda, which is item number 9, public comment period. We didn't have anybody register for that, so we will move on to item number 10, staff reports. We have the report and capital project status, and council, I'll simply ask if there's any questions on that particular report. And if there is nothing, then we'd just be looking for a motion to receive that. Councillor Johnston, seconded by Councillor Watt. All in favor? That motion carries. On to item 10.2, non-eligible sources 2026 report, and that's over to CIO Davis.
Good evening, members of the mayor and members of council, gallery. I'm going to give you a brief update. So related to non-eligible items or recyclable items in the township. This is a pretty, so I think the report relatively speaks for itself, but it breaks down into 3 specific areas, and I'm going to really briefly touch on each one. So Ontario started a shift to produce responsibility for dealing with their recyclable materials. We've been going through a transition period. That period comes to an end at the end of this year, and as of January 1st, 2026, that that new program takes hold across Ontario. We were informed by the county council. So recycling has always been in the purview of the upper tier government or Peterborough County. As we go through that transitionary period and we get to the end of it, Peterborough County has indicated that they will no longer, nor will Circular Materials Ontario, they will no longer be picking up recyclable materials from our institutional, our industrial, and our commercial properties. That has some direct impacts and indirect impacts on the township. Directly in the township, all of our buildings are institutional in nature, which means that regular recycling pickup will cease to exist for our locations as of January 1st, 2026. And so we need to develop a plan as to how we're going to deal with that stuff in the future. Secondly, and the county has given us some direction that is no longer happening. And there's a laundry list of, I think there's 4 providers that can do that work in Ontario. Secondarily, so we do have, they have announced that they are going to continue Circular Materials of Ontario, which is the sort of business branch of the producer responsibility group. They are going to continue with curbside recycling pickup throughout the township moving forward in the future, with the exception of not using the institutional, commercial, or industrial properties. The challenge we have, the biggest challenge we have as an organization is, well, we have a number, certainly, but really in this sort of realm, our biggest challenge is related to properties that are not available for pickup because they don't exist on a regular road. We have over 250 properties that do not have actual road access, whether it be island or other. And the pickup of those materials has been actually part of or goes through the land transfer station. Circular Materials Ontario has agreed to continue to pick up those materials at the land transfer station. However, they submitted a change notice to remove all references to what they call ICI or industrial, commercial, institutional materials, as well as a series of other items that are noted in that change notice. Really what it is they're willing to pay us less money to pick that material up. They're unwilling to take some of those materials. They are willing to allow for us to blend those materials. So if anyone shows up at the land transfer station with recyclable materials from the ICI category, we are allowed to take them. They will remove them or a portion of them out for us to deal with is really what the outcome of that notice is to us, and an outcome of our communications with Circular Materials Ontario. I bring this report forward today for your information, to let you know that this is a changing dynamic. In fact, I'll speak to sort of that in just a moment. And then finally, to ask council to do 2 things, one thing in particular that's in the report and one that I'm going to ask as an extension of said report. We've drafted a resolution similar to our neighbors across Peterborough County. I think Peterborough County even has a resolution. There's some correspondence on this agenda tonight from the city of Waterloo that is feeling very much the same way as we do. And our neighbors in Cavan Monaghan have passed the exact same resolution related to dealing with institutional, commercial, and industrial recyclable materials. And really, I'm asking council to contemplate whether they would be willing to pass that resolution tonight and send it on to the province and our local MPP, indicating our concern and asking them to reconsider. Because the reality is, if the province has always been responsible, the upper tier, through the upper tier government as their service provider to manage recycled materials, if they're unwilling to do it, because they've downloaded that responsibility to producers, and producers are unwilling to do it, and they're not being held to account, then effectively that responsibility is now being downloaded to the municipality or the township. And as we heard tonight, we don't have extra money for anything, let alone doing this type of activity on behalf of the community.
Thank you very much, Theo Davis. I've got Deputy Mayor Nelson. Are you making a motion or is there a question here? I'm just going to check. Oh, yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Any questions on the report that's before us? CAO Davis?
I just have an additional comment related to that. So as this is a changing dynamic, so I wrote this report last week. And then we got more information this week from Circular Materials Ontario. And really what it is they've indicated to us, they've given us what's available in the change notice, and they've given us some options. And those options are we can accept the changes and the lower amount of money that we will receive to host their bins and take responsibility for whatever materials. We need to indicate to them two things. We need to they want us to re-sign the agreement by November 30th. And our choices are to take what their proposal is or to opt out of it. The challenge we have as a township is it's very difficult for us to opt out of that proposal, that agreement, because we have over 250 properties that are not serviced in any other way, and that would be forcing those individuals to deal with their recycling in a different way. Secondarily, we have the option to either at the land transfer station, if we are to continue to receive those materials, we have choices. The solitary choice actually is, if we continue to receive those materials, do we want to allow for blending? So ICI materials come in. Do we want to allow for separation, i.e. put a separate bin in that we deal with ourselves, or to deny all ICI material at the land transfer station? What I will say from an operational perspective, staff's favor not to separate those materials, but to blend. If we're going to accept them, we would like them to be blended, because we think the cost of to deal with them separately and to deal with the public and educate them on how we would deal with them separately would put a further burden on our staff complement that work in that facility. So we're seeking some just general direction tonight, recognizing that we will probably be back before the end of November with a further report about how this is going to play out.
Okay, thank you very much, CAO Davis. Deputy Mayor, are you still wanting to move the recommendation? Yep. Does anyone want to second that recommendation or second that motion? Councillor Watt, any discussion on the motion? I'm beyond words on it, quite truthfully. It seems like Circular Materials is doing a take it or leave it kind of approach as it relates to the contract. We'll wait to see more information from staff on that. All in favor? That motion carries. And CAO Davis, are you looking for some further direction now as it relates to this moving negotiation? I don't know.
It's not through the mayor back to the mayor. It's not really a negotiation. I think we just have some decisions to make. I think realistically, we intend to come back before November. We're going to indicate to Circular Materials Ontario that we intend to sign a contract, provided that council will support us before the end of November. And signing said contract would be the only information we would provide to CMO at this stage, and wait for them to tell us exactly what that future looks like. It's really challenging because it changes on a regular basis, and we don't have the resources in-house to be as responsive on these kinds of matters.
Understood. Thank you very much. Okay, council, in the essence of time, I'm going to flag the time. We have our procedural bylaw allows us to go until 7:30, at which time or shortly before, I'll be looking for a motion to extend the hour, which is a term. We're really just extending it by a half an hour. But let's see what we can get through between now and then, but certainly we'll need to keep an eye on the clock. Correspondence under action items. We've got Municipality of Waterloo with a request to amend the Ontario Reg Blue Box Producers Accountability. Councillor Watt.
Receive and support, please.
And who would like to second that? Councillor Johnston. Any discussion? All in favor? That motion carries. 12.1, Town of Newmarket, a resolution regarding automated speed enforcement.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to receive and support.
A motion to receive and support, seconded by Councillor Landsman. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? That too carries. On to 12.3, the Township of Edwardsburg, Cardinal, regarding the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, otherwise known as OSIF, which is the fund that CAO Davis was referencing in the budget. What would you like to do with this one, Councillor Johnston?
I'd like to make a motion to receive and support.
And would somebody like to second that motion? Counselor Landsman, any discussion? All in favor? And that motion carries. We have no bylaws, no reports from notices of resolution. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing nothing, on to announcements. I will flag once again the Coffee and Conversations event that's happening on Thursday in the Town Hall upstairs from 6:30 till 8:30, and that is that informal discussion around the budget. Anyone is welcome to come. And of course, November the 11th, we will be once again recognizing Remembrance Day at the Warsaw Cenotaph. I believe at 10:50 a.m. is when we get to proceedings underway for that. Any other announcements from council? Councillor Johnston?
You know, I want to make note of a couple things. The first thing is our Santa Claus Parade, which is November 29th on Saturday at 5 o'clock. We're looking for people to put in floats and where we can have a great parade like we did last year. So that's November 29th at 5 o'clock. And then a couple little notes here. Our Knights of Columbus are having, starting the Sunday breakfast at the hall in Douro. They have it first of the month, every Sunday, first of the month, starting November, once a month. And the other thing is, our ladies group over there is having our ladies' night out in Douro again on November 22nd. So if you're interested, you can still buy some tickets.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. I didn't think tickets would be available still. That one's a sellout every year. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have no closed session, just going down the agenda. Confirming bylaw, Councillor Watt, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nelson on the confirming bylaw. All in favor? That motion carries. Just a flag, our next regular council meeting is on November 4th, starting at 5 o'clock. And lastly, just a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Landsman. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.